Alright, boys. Bettrmma is back, the best ASMR on MMA YouTube. We are coming at you guys with a reaction and review of Alex Perez versus Nicolau, UFC Fight Night. This card for me is a perfect example as to why we watch the UFC Fight Nights. You know, this fight night is packed between UFC 300 and UFC 301, so it's a very hard time slot in terms of packing on actual ranked talent. In this case, we only had two actual ranked matchups on the fight night card, but both fights pulled through tremendously, and I want to get started immediately with the main event, Alex Perez versus Nicolau. Now, I picked Nicolau in this fight. They really felt each other out for the most part of the first round. Alex Perez was landing more solid leg kicks. Nicolau was looking to land his counters by the end of the round and started to find his range. Once the second round starts, Nicolau tries to get more aggressive with his kicks, mainly his teep kick and his leg kicks, and starts going for body shots and looks for his hook combinations up top more. As Nicolau is moving in, Alex Perez catches Nicolau with a great hook shot that gets Nicolau wobbled. Nicolau starts to back up against the fence. Alex Perez does a great job of tracking him down and pressuring him with his footwork, backs Nicolau up against the fence, lets the hands go, and knocks Nicolau out with a flush right hand that folds Nicolau and puts him to sleep. Ends the night for Nicolau. Absolutely great finish by Alex Perez. Being a former title contender, seeing him in such great shape, it gives us a lot of hope for who he can perform against in the future. So, great performance by Alex Perez. If we could get Amir Albazi or Kai Kara-France in the cage, it seems like it's impossible to get either of them in the cage right now, but if we can match up Alex Perez with one of those guys, I think that would be a great matchup to see who deserves the next title shot. Moving on to the co-main event, Ryan Spann versus Guskov. Now, in the first round, Ryan Spann was attempting his takedown, trying to push Guskov up against the fence. Eventually, later in the round, Spann is able to secure the takedown and actually gets Guskov's back, flattens him out, and is looking to attack the rear naked choke. There was a lot of time for Ryan Spann to do work there, and he really let Guskov off the hook. So as they get into the second round, Guskov, with his unorthodox hands-down style, is looking for more of his shots up top to hit Ryan Spann with some odd angled uppercuts or hooks. Ryan Spann is mainly just looking to land his 1-2. And this is a very risky style that Guskov does, where he has his hands all the way down to his waist, because you see Ryan Spann's 2 literally touching Guskov's chin and barely touching it. And you know, if there's just a little bit more twist on the end of that punch, that could be a knockout shot and end Guskov's night. So he plays this very dangerous game. He sort of reminds me of if your mom says, "You want Yuri Prohashka? We have Yuri Prohashka at home," and it's Guskov. You know, he's hands down. He's going to get teed off on by his opponents. The leg kicks are going to be there for his opponents because he's essentially a white Bobby Green at light heavyweight. 3 minutes and 20 seconds into the second round, Guskov rocks Spann and gets Spann on some wobbly legs. Spann is able to regain himself and hit Guskov with a couple more decent shots. Then Guskov lands a phenomenal flush uppercut on Ryan Spann, gets Ryan Spann all over Queer Street on chicken legs. Ryan Spann is going for a takedown. Guskov shrugs him off, gets him down to the ground, finishes him with some savage ground and pound. I picked Guskov in this fight because of his unorthodox style, going up such an unimpressive, untechnical fighter like Ryan Spann. Real fighters win real fights, okay? People picking Alexander Rakic because on paper it looks like he can do decent against Yuri Prohashka. Yuri Prohashka is the real fighter and he will win the real fight. Same with Guskov. He has this unorthodox, dangerous gambling style where he's got his hands low, but he's going to go for the knockout shots, and he's actually in there to get the KO. He's a real deal savage. And now we have another interesting, heavy-hitting, light heavyweight contender. You guys want to listen to these guys like MMA Guru and Lucas Tracy, And what is MMA Guru's reasoning for picking Ryan Spann? Oh, on paper, Ryan Spann has fought better competition, and he's taller and got a longer reach. Guskov is a real deal fighter. And on paper, MMA Guru wants to ignore that. And Lucas Tracy wants to ignore that too, because going with Ryan Spann is the safe pick. And they don't want to actually have any real thoughts and opinions on MMA that is going to go against their casual MMA fan base. There's another example of this down on the card. This is a prime example as to why you got to trust Better MMA over MMA Guru and Lucas Tracy. Moving on to Lane versus Denise. Now, in the first round, Lane was able to get Denise to the ground. Of course, Denise is a kickboxer. Lane was like, look, I don't want to get knocked out again. I'm a football player. I'm attacking your ass. I'm going to put you on the ground. And he was in half guard for the entirety of the first round. With about 15 seconds left on the clock, he moves swiftly into full mount, starts letting go with some heavy shots in full mount. And Lane has a great dominant first round. As the second round starts, Denise is starting to get his hands going. As Lane tries to engage in the clinch, Denise starts blasting him with uppercuts and hooks through Lane's clinch, which seriously mess up Lane and make him hesitant to go for the takedown. Denise starts to find his range with his shots. Lane is going for desperation takedowns but isn't able to execute on them. Halfway through the second round, Denise clips Lane. Lane wobbles back against the cage. Denise puts him away with another big shot. At the end of the day, as predicted, Denise kickboxing fundamentals and technique shined through the entirety of the fight. Moving on to Jonathan Pierce versus David Onama. Now, for me, this was the most controversial decision on the night. I personally felt like Jonathan Pierce won this fight. I had to turn off the commentary for this fight because throughout the entirety of the first round, no matter what David Onama did, they were playing him up like he was the second coming of Israel Adesanya or something like that. Because he had the slight speed advantage because he had a slight speed advantage over Jonathan Pierce in terms of his straight punches, they were going, oh my God, David Onama just looks so fast. As soon as Jonathan Pierce would go in for a takedown and get Onama up against the fence, oh, look at the way Onama is defending this takedown. And then only 10 or 15 seconds later, Jonathan Pierce would drag David Onama to the ground. So I had to turn off the commentary because you can tell when the UFC is obviously behind one fighter. A perfect example of this is Guram Kutateladze versus Elvis Brenner. Watch that fight back and watch how from minute one of round one, the commentators have decided which fighter they think is more technical and more impressive and which one they're trying to hype up more to the fans. Round one, Jonathan Pierce is able to land these big leaping hooks. He's able to take Onama down and able to get Onama's back. Now, continuously throughout the fight, whenever Jonathan Pierce would take his back, he would always slip off and then Onama would just turn around and end up in mount position. This is the entire story of round two. Jonathan Pierce goes for a takedown. Onama jumps a guillotine. He's not able to get it. Jonathan Pierce is able to scramble to Onama's back, and then Onama is able to turn around and end up in mount position. Jonathan Pierce is able to get back up, able to get Onama's back, and they do this at least 4 or 5 times throughout the entirety of the round. It's the story of Jonathan Pierce getting the back, then slipping off, and Onama simply turning around and ending up in mount position, not landing any sort of significant ground and pound, not even throwing any ground and pound, and he's not even going for submission attempts either. So I don't see how you can really make a solid case for Onama winning the first round because he didn't land anything significant on the feet and he got out grappled, and certainly in the second round he didn't land anything significant on the feet and he got out grappled. All he did was turn around and end up in mount when Jonathan Pierce would make a mistake. But Jonathan Pierce doing something good by taking the back should still get him points. Turning around and ending up in mount is not equivalent to taking somebody's back. Now in the third round, Onama finds some early success on the feet. Jonathan Pierce again goes for a takedown, gets back control, and the same story. He falls off. Onama lands in mount, and Onama does absolutely nothing with the position. Absolute dog water prospect. When they get up to the feet again, because Jonathan Pierce has successfully been able to get up off the ground every single time Onama has been in mount, but he does not get rewarded for this by the judges somehow. Jonathan Pierce takes the initiative in the last 10 seconds of the fight to absolutely swang and bang with David Onama, Max Holloway style, landing more than David Onama in this exchange and arguably evening up the stand-up exchanges for the third round. So in my opinion, the story of this fight was David Onama showing that he could get taken down at will and get his back taken at will, and Jonathan Pierce simply made the mistake of falling off of Onama's back, not being able to secure hooks or the body triangle every single time, and David Onama gets rewarded because he can fall into mount position and do absolutely nothing with it. I think it was an absolutely horrible decision, and I blame the commentators because when you're in the apex and the commentators are talking about Onama, 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 the judges are right there in earshot. So of course that's going to influence them. Repetition is the number one easiest form of brainwashing. Repetition caused them to pick David Onama to win that fight, and David Onama did not deserve it whatsoever. He's an absolute dog water of a prospect. That is the son of Nate the Train Landwehr. Moving on to Uros Medic versus Tim Means. Now, I was expecting Tim Means to try and make this a tough fight. That's exactly what he did. He tried to push Uros Medic up against the cage, try and take him down as soon as the fight started. Uros Medic is seriously strong at this welterweight division. He was not getting taken down or moved by Tim Means. He reversed Tim Means against the cage, threw a great elbow on the break. As they're feeling each other out on the feet, Tim Means is trying to pressure and move in. Uros Medic throws a beautiful uppercut, puts Tim Means out. Tim Means falls to the ground, only needs a few more shots to follow up to fully put him out. Beautiful performance by Uros Medic. I think a great matchup for Uros Medic could either be Charles Radke, or if we think he's ready for that top 15 jump, let's give him somebody like Jeff Neal or Michael Venom Page. Moving on to Henry versus Ronnie Yahya. Now, the story of this fight was simply that Ronnie Yahya is just an older guy and he's one step behind. Henry is not the most devastating volume striker in the bantamweight division, but he was just able to out-volume, outwork Ronnie Yahya at every stage throughout this fight. Ronnie Yahya is a grappler, of course, so you're not going to expect a lot of heavy, fast combinations out of him. So Derrick Henry was just able to pepper him up, hit him to the body, to the head, to the legs, with all sorts of openings, just picking and choosing what he wanted to take against Ronnie Yahya. Ronnie Yahya gets dropped at the end of the second round. As Derrick Henry gets more comfortable in the third round, he just starts teeing off and peppering Ronnie Yahya with shots. Ronnie Yahya gets knocked down and finished midway through the third round. Great performance from Victor Henry. He's not really that top 15 level, but he really showed that he's one of the better veterans in the bantamweight division. Moving on to Austin Hubbard versus Michael Figlak. Now, I had hopes for this Michael Figlak guy, given that he had these G.I. Joe arms, that he was going to start starching dudes. A lot of the times, you see guys who know that they have knockout power. Abdul Razak Al Hassan is a great example. They will headhunt far too much. And it would do them such favors if they were just able to go to an actual boxing gym and learn how to box and learn how important moving inside and body shots are. Maybe just learn from Ilia Topuria what he can do when he moves his targets from the body to the head. You will get far more knockouts moving around your opponent's guard and getting them thinking about different targets instead of you trying to set up your jab, overhand right 30 times throughout a fight. How many times do you think it's going to take for your UFC level opponent to get a read of that and learn how to roll that shot? Austin Hubbard, I'm going to be honest, did nothing special in this fight. Michael Figlak just telegraphed his heavy shots way too much. All it took was Austin Hubbard to get clipped slightly by those shots in the first round for him to read that they were coming and then for him to start rolling them perfectly as the fight went on. And as the fight goes on, Austin Hubbard is finding his front kick, he's finding his leg kicks, he's able to start winning the jab battle with Figlak more, and he outworked Michael Figlak because Figlak does not know how to diversify his strikes. Good for Austin Hubbard on getting the win. Moving on to Don'Tale Mayes versus Kyle Machado. I picked Kyle Machado in this fight. I expected him to get this to the ground at some point, and I thought he would be able to submit Mayes. Mayes was essentially just thugging on the feet, hands low, hitting Machado with some good shots. Pretty slow-paced fight, not the most entertaining. Don'Tale Mayes was able to land the more heavy shots, and as the fight went on, he landed more frequently, so he got an easy decision there. Moving on to James Ellentop versus Chris Padilla. This was the second fight where Better MMA has got your back, where MMA Guru and Lucas Tracy, they don't know how to think outside of the box, and they just think, oh, Ellentop is 14-2, he's taller, he's got a longer reach. Hey, according to MMA Guru, James Ellentop is like JDM, the way he has the same composure walking down his opponents. Well, guess what? If you're walking down your opponents in MMA, it only means something when you have the power of somebody like JDM. So Chris Padilla throughout this fight played very smart with a high guard, lands his leg kicks, lands his overhand rights. As Ellentop moves on Padilla, Padilla goes for a beautiful double leg takedown, eventually is able to get the back, and secures the easy first round submission rear naked choke. Now, the opener of the night was Gabriel Benitez versus Mahashat, and all we learned from this fight really was that Mahashat is garbage. He has horrible accuracy when it comes to his punches. The guy ended up going life or death with Gabriel Benitez. Looking at the total striking stats right now, Mahashat landed 31% of his strikes. Gabriel Benitez was able to eat everything that Mahashat threw at him. If only Gabriel Benitez had a little bit more punching power, he would have broken Mahashat in that fight. So Mahashat got the win, but as soon as he faces a real test in the lightweight division, he's going to get folded up and sent down to featherweight real quick. Either sent down to featherweight or sent out of the UFC. All in all, decent card. I really enjoyed the way the co-main event and the main event ended. I got the pick right with Gushkov. Totally dunked on Guru and Tracy as we usually do here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Better MMA out. Peace.